Well, folks, we're here in Vancouver, Canada at Fully Charged Live 2023, and I'm here with
Bruce Stout. I'm with the Vancouver Electric Vehicle Association. I'm standing in front of an electric car that was built as an electric car in 1912. Sorry, it's the 1913 model of an electric car. It's called a Detroit Electric. It has a 72-volt power system, and it still runs today after 110 years. It has a range of about 45 kilometers. The original batteries were very similar to this design. It was an Edison nickel battery using a basic substance rather than an acid substance. And the original batteries lasted in excess of 25 years.
Wow. And when was this particular vehicle kind of rebuilt with the batteries?
So all we added to the vehicle were these batteries. And these batteries were added to the vehicle about 3 years ago. So some of the people behind me in this location were the people responsible for putting the batteries together.
Wow. And you had mentioned when we were talking a little bit earlier that this vehicle spent the majority of its life right here in Canada. It was considered a Canadian asset.
Yeah, it's
and here, right here in British Columbia. So tell us a little bit about that.
So the vehicle was originally bought by the French family, Dr. Cecil French and his wife Florence French. It was her daily driver from 1913 to the mid-1950s or mid-1960s, depending upon who you listen to and whose story you believe.
Yeah.
And the vehicle was parked in the basement of the Empress Hotel. It was brought up to the portico of the Empress, and she was the daily driver in Victoria. We actually met her nephew, and her nephew told us that he used to go for a ride in this car with his Mrs. French. And there's one classic story about them driving down the street in Victoria, and the tally-ho, which was the horse-drawn, came up next to them and announced that, ladies and gentlemen, this is the Dowager of the Empress. This is Florence French in her electric car sometime in the late 50s, early 60s. And he said to her, you know, they're talking about us. And she says, just believe them, or don't believe them, Ernest, just ignore them. They're being incredibly rude.
Unreal. Well, there's always been, from what I understand and what I've read, obviously long before I was around, that there was a kind of a negative stigma. It was more that, not negative stigma, but that electric cars were marketed towards the ladies because we didn't have to get out and hand crank to get them started and that sort of thing.
Yep.
And so there was kind of a negative connotation for a man to be driving an electric car. Am I right in saying
yes
that?
And no. The wife of Henry Ford, Clara Ford, had 2 electric cars that she used because she didn't want to be in a situation where she had to turn the crank and start the car.
Okay.
One of the things that happened to kill the electric car is that this is a $3,200 electric car at a time when a Model T Ford was about a $600 or a $700 car. Bring that into today's market, $320,000 for an electric car today versus the common electric cars that are now available for $60,000, $70,000. And as we heard today, roughly a large percentage of the cars in Canada, the average price of the car in Canada is between $65,000 and $70,000 for electric and non-electric. You've got a $4,000 provincial rebate and a $5,000 federal rebate. All of a sudden, it makes a lot more sense to buy an electric car than it is to buy a gas-powered car.
Plus our fuel savings.
Absolutely.
And maintenance.
12 cents a liter in British Columbia was the high price a couple of weeks ago. I do know from my wife, who was in Toronto a couple of days ago, it was down to $1.65.
Right.
But the gasoline price in British Columbia is driving 20% of the people to buy an electrically powered car in BC because it just makes sense to do it.
Absolutely. Now, speaking of maintenance savings, what would have been the maintenance on this vehicle back in the early 1900s?
Well, you'd want to keep air in the tires. You don't have to worry about windshield wipers because there were none. You didn't need any washer fluid, no oil changes. The
Right.
car would mark its territory.
Yes.
So it made a lot more sense to have an electric car like this.
Detroit Electric, of course, they weren't the only manufacturer of electric vehicles.
Oh, lots of them, yeah.
There was Baker and there was a number of others.
Yeah.
What's your opinion on the survivability of these vehicles? Why don't we see more of them?
Oh, well, basically what's happening with any of these situations, you need somebody with foresight. So there was 4 people that had the foresight to keep this asset in British Columbia rather than see it go south. There was a lot of things to do with the quality of construction. This is an aluminum body on a steel and wood frame. Wow. So this has been designed for longevity. Now, if you take a look at the original price of this vehicle being equivalent of $320,000 in today's money, and it being over 100 years old, that's $3,200 today to buy this car.
Yeah.
So if you look at total cost of ownership, it's a lot cheaper to buy electric.
and keep it for 100 years.
Keep it for 100 years.
And we do the batteries, what, every 25 or so?
Well, every 25 years you get new batteries, yeah. The way the batteries work is annually you change the electrolytes,
Okay.
and the batteries just keep going. So the batteries that are in here now will outlive me
Wow.
and anybody else that's standing here talking about this car today.
Incredible.
The only way we're able to fund this is with $25 memberships. So wherever you live, go and contact your local Electric Vehicle Association. There's a wealth of knowledge from the people that are part of that association, and it's a great way of you finding out and getting some help buying your electric vehicle.
Well, we're so glad that we have it here at Fully Charged Live 2023. Bruce, thank you very much.